When I first stepped into this house, Daniel still had sawdust in his hair and calluses on his palms. He had just finished sanding the floors by hand, insisting it was the only way to feel the grain breathe. I remember laughing barefoot, letting the warmth of the planks settle beneath my soles. That was 37 years ago, back when our love was still loud, back when this house smelled like fresh pine and possibility. We raised our children here. Nathan learned to ride his bike in the gravel driveway, scraping both knees before figuring out balance was more about trust than skill. Coraline used to sneak into the pantry and hide with her picture book surrounded by flour and beans, her tiny voice reading aloud to the shelves. I used to leave little notes in their lunchboxes, "You are braver than you know," or "Don't forget to smile with your eyes." Silly things. Small things. But I thought they mattered. For years, I kept this family stitched together in the quiet ways. I balanced checkbooks when Daniel's small, contracting jobs were slow. I taught literacy classes at the local library and brought home leftover muffins from town meetings. I sewed curtains, fixed buttons, and said yes more often than I said no. When Daniel got sick, I learned how to administer his medications and helped him to the bathroom when his legs stopped listening. I never asked for thanks. I didn't think I had to. Now when Nathan visits, he doesn't see the house Daniel built. He sees a liability. A property with too many stairs and poor resale appeal. Coraline still kisses my cheek when she comes by, but there's always a glance at the clock, a mention of her next shift, a hesitation when I ask if she can stay for dinner. No one's unkind, not really. But kindness isn't the same as care. I sit most mornings at the kitchen table where the wood has worn smooth under decades of elbows and teacups. The silence isn't heavy, it's hollow. I can hear the gaps where voices used to be. I can hear the absence of being needed. And I wonder when exactly I stopped being someone they came home to and became someone they'd just check in on. The door creaked open that afternoon just after I pulled the sourdough from the oven. I didn't need to turn around to know it was Nathan. He didn't knock anymore. Nathan didn't waste time on pleasantries. He walked straight to the back window and peered out at the garden. "You know the hedge has grown wild, right? Looks like it hasn't been trimmed in months." I folded the dish towel neatly on the counter. "I've been meaning to get to it." He turned, eyebrows raised. "Mom, you shouldn't have to. You could hire someone, or better yet, maybe it's time to think about scaling back. This place is a lot." I leaned against the counter, the warmth from the oven fading behind me. "I'm managing just fine." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the hallway, pressing his foot against the third stair. It creaked like it always had. This step could be a real hazard. "What if you fall? I've lived here for 37 years, Nathan. If it was going to take me down, it would have done it by now." He gave a clipped laugh. "That's not exactly comforting. Look, I'm just saying we could talk about options. Smaller spaces, easier maintenance, maybe a place with on-call help if something happens. And who would make the decisions? You?" His face shifted, caught off guard by the sharpness in my tone. "No one's making decisions, just looking ahead." "Funny," I said. "Walking past him, you didn't seem this interested in looking ahead last year. Or the year before." He didn't respond. After a few more comments about the insulation, the water heater, and how buying interest is high right now, he kissed my cheek and left. I watched his car disappear down the driveway, a pit settling in my stomach. 2 days later, Coraline showed up with grocery bags and her soft voice. "I brought the oat milk you like." I smiled and took the bag from her hands. "That's thoughtful, thank you." She sat at the table while I put things away, and after a few minutes, she began carefully, like tiptoeing across thin ice. "Nathan mentioned you seem tired, that maybe this place is starting to wear on you." I kept my back turned to the fridge. "Did he? I just think." "He worries. And I do too. All these stairs. The snow in the winter. It's a lot." I turned slowly. "You both act like this house grew fangs when Daniel died." "It didn't. It's the same house." She looked down at her hands. "I know. But you're not the same." I sat beside her, my voice calm but steady. No, I'm not. I'm alone. But that doesn't mean I'm incapable. She didn't argue, just nodded, and we sat in the soft hum of the kitchen, two women on either side of an invisible line. Later that evening, I pulled Daniel's old ledger from the cabinet where he used to track every repair and improvement made to the house. The last entry was dated the summer before he died. The heart attack was mild, they said. A warning, not a punishment, the doctor offered with a forced smile, as if a weakened heart could be comforted by metaphors. I spent 2 nights under fluorescent lights listening to machines count my pulse like a metronome too slow to dance to. Coraline stayed the first evening, fussing with blankets and whispering that I needed rest. She left me with lavender lotion and a plastic straw bent just so. Nathan didn't come until the second day. He arrived mid-morning, a large manila envelope tucked under one arm and a coffee in the other. "How are you feeling?" he asked, lips pressed into a tight line that didn't quite pass for concern. "I've been better," I said, adjusting the hospital blanket already warm under its scratchy weight. "Well, I brought you something to make life easier." He pulled a small stack of papers from the envelope, smoothing them on the rolling tray. "Some insurance forms, power of attorney stuff, just basics. Thought I'd save you the hassle of the paperwork circus." I looked at the pages but didn't reach for them. "Why do I need a power of attorney now? In case things get complicated," he said too quickly. Coraline and I agreed it would be wise to have a plan. I studied his face. The softness he used to carry when he was younger was gone. All angles now, all negotiation. "I'd like my doctor to look at them first." He blinked. "They're standard forms. Then you won't mind if someone else reads them." His jaw clenched. "It's just for your protection." I didn't answer. I simply turned the tray away and pulled my blanket tighter. He didn't argue further. He left the envelope on the side table and said he'd check in tomorrow. That evening I called Howard. He arrived with a bouquet of gas station tulips and a frown deeper than the one he wore at Daniel's funeral. "You don't sound like yourself," he said, pulling a chair to my bedside. I nodded toward the envelope. He brought those. Said they were for insurance. Howard didn't open them. He just stared at them for a moment, then looked at me. "Do you trust him?" "I want to, but not enough to sign anything while my heart's still catching up with itself." He stayed until the nurse came to check my vitals again. As he left, he promised to return in the morning with someone who could read the fine print properly. It was a bright spring morning when Coraline pulled into the hospital driveway to take me home. Her face was tight, guarded. She offered a paper cup of coffee already half cold and asked if I felt strong enough for stairs. I didn't ask why she looked like she hadn't slept. The closer we got to my street, the quieter she became. When we turned the final corner, I saw it immediately. A red and white sign on the front lawn. Sold. For a moment, I thought it had to be a mistake, a prank, a cruel coincidence. But the sign was planted deep, straight, official. I couldn't breathe. "Coraline," I said, my voice brittle. "What is that?" She pulled into the driveway without answering. A silver SUV sat parked at the curb. A couple stood near the porch, their real estate agent gesturing toward the flower beds. Before I could open the door, Nathan appeared from the side of the house. "Mom," he said, smiling too easily, "you're back. You're just in time." In time for what I asked, stepping out of the car. My legs felt foreign under me. Nathan spread his arms like a magician unveiling a trick. "The walkers Rachel and Colin are the buyers. Final walkthrough today. They're very excited." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I looked at Coraline, but she was staring at her hands in her lap. "You sold my house?" I asked. Finally, the words sticking like splinters. "It's done," he said, as if that made it justified. "We closed 2 days ago." "I didn't want to stress you out at the hospital." "You didn't want to stress me." My voice cracked. "Nathan, I never agreed to this. I never even put the house on the market." He shifted his weight. "You signed the papers." I stared at him. "No, I didn't." "Well, I had to move things along. You were incapacitated. The documents were filed under my authority." "You forged them." My words came out flat, not a question. A confirmation. The couple and their agent were backing away quietly. Coraline stepped between us, her face pale. "Nathan, you said she had agreed before the hospitalization. She would have," he snapped, "if she were thinking clearly." "Get out of my yard," I said, pointing toward the street. Nathan scoffed. "Mom, don't be dramatic. This is done. Get out." Coraline reached for me, but I stepped away. I walked up to the porch, turned, and watched as Nathan stood there, uncertain, calculating, and then finally turned and walked away, his keys jingling in his pocket. The young couple had vanished. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Still mine for now, but I could feel the breach like a cold wind coming through the walls. That night, I called Howard. He answered on the second ring. "Tell me everything," he said, and I did. Every word, every detail. And when I finished, he told me what I already knew I was going to have to fight. The morning after the confrontation, Coraline came by early, her eyes red-rimmed and her hands stuffed deep in her coat pockets. She didn't ask if she could come in, just walked through the door, like she used to when she was a girl back before we needed permission to be close. "I didn't know he'd already sold it," she said. "I swear to you I didn't." I set 2 mugs of tea on the table, neither of us touching them. "But you knew something." She looked down. "He said you were slipping, that you'd mentioned wanting to move, but then kept changing your mind. He said he and Aunt Faye were helping with the paperwork because it was too much for you." I let the name sit there between us. "Faye," I said slowly. "My sister, Faye, was involved." Coraline nodded. She told me they'd been planning. Looking into retirement communities, discussing how to transition you out. I laughed once, sharp and bitter. Transition, like I'm a project management problem. She said Nathan promised her a portion of the sale once it closed, said she deserved something for stepping in. I closed my eyes. That familiar cold mix of humiliation and rage swirled in my chest, and I let it burn. She told me it would be better for everyone if you were in a place where people could manage you, Coraline whispered, like you were unmanageable. Howard came by later that afternoon. With him was a woman named Evelyn Dunn, tall, sharp-eyed, no-nonsense. She wore dark slacks and carried a soft leather folder she didn't let out of her hands. "I've reviewed the documents," she said after introducing herself. "Your signature on the power of attorney was forged. The notary listed no longer works at that firm and denies ever meeting you. This will hold up in court." I nodded, my mouth too dry to speak. "We'll start with an emergency injunction to freeze any transfer of property and move quickly on civil fraud. If criminal charges follow, they'll come from the DA's office." She flipped open her folder. "I'll need copies of every document you still have. Financials title anything that ties you directly to the house. I've kept everything I said. Daniel taught me to never throw away paper with your name on it." Howard smiled softly beside me. "That habit might just save you." As Evelyn began laying out our next steps, I reached under the table and pulled out the metal tin where I kept every deed, every receipt, every slip of ownership tied to this house. I spent the next 3 days gathering every piece of proof that I was still the rightful owner of my own life. My name was printed on the title, the insurance, the taxes. Daniel had made sure of that. After his passing, I hadn't changed much, but I'd kept everything. I found the deed in its original envelope, the one we received at the town hall the day we paid off the mortgage. I ran my fingers over the raised seal, remembering how proud he'd been standing beside me in his good flannel shirt, holding a bag of fresh bagels like it was a trophy. Evelyn had me sign affidavits and scanned every document. She filed the emergency order, and within 48 hours, the county clerk issued a hold on the transfer. The sale couldn't be finalized. Not legally. The Walkers would have to wait. Nathan's plan had a leak, and now it was pouring. Coraline came by every evening that week, quieter than usual sometimes, with soup, sometimes just to sit. I didn't ask why she kept returning. I didn't need to. She was trying to make something right in her own quiet way. Howard, bless him, brought his old dictaphone from when he worked at the courthouse. Record everything he said. Every call, every knock at the door. Write down times, dates, names. Pretend you're building a case because you are. So I did. I kept a notebook by the phone. Wrote down every voicemail from Nathan, every visit from Faye. I started a second log in the kitchen drawer. I even documented the morning Lisa from down the road brought over a casserole and asked why a stranger was parked in my driveway, taking pictures. I told her the truth. She said she'd write a statement if I needed one. Evelyn also requested medical records, specifically a note from my cardiologist confirming I was mentally competent during my hospitalization. Dr. Epstein provided it without hesitation. He'd been treating me since Daniel's first heart surgery. No signs of cognitive impairment, he wrote. Patient is clear-minded and stable. I folded the letter into its own envelope, labeled it in black ink, and added it to the growing file. That night, I sat at my desk, the same one Daniel built into the corner of the upstairs guest room, and opened the bottom drawer. Inside was our will, yellowed, but intact. I flipped through its pages past the signatures to the final line where Nathan was listed as executor. I opened a new document. This time his name wouldn't be there. Instead, I listed Coraline and then the names of my grandchildren. I left something small to Howard, something meaningful to Evelyn, if she'd accept it, and wrote out a note to accompany the new distribution of the house, in case anyone ever tried to twist it again. I signed the document with steady hands. When I looked up, the hallway light was on, and I could hear Coraline washing dishes downstairs. We sat across from each other in a windowless room, the walls too white, the silence too rehearsed. Evelyn sat beside me, calm and sharp. Nathan leaned back in his chair with arms folded. Brent beside him, eyes darting everywhere but toward mine. Faye clutched her purse like it might protect her from consequence. Evelyn spoke first. The documents were forged. The notary denied involvement. Medical records confirmed Ms. Marston was fully competent. Nathan scoffed. It was for her own good. Brent cleared his throat. I didn't know she hadn't agreed. Faye glanced sideways. He told me it was settled. I looked at each of them. You made me disappear on paper while I was still breathing. Evelyn slid the agreement across the table. Sign this and all claims on the house are relinquished. In return, we don't press criminal charges. Brent picked up the pen first. His signature trembled. Faye followed, without a word. Nathan hesitated. She would have come around, he muttered. She didn't need to, I said. It wasn't yours to take. He signed. Outside, the wind had picked up. I stepped out into the cold with my name still legally, mine, my house still standing, and a part of me just beginning to settle. That night, after Coraline had gone, and the house was still, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold, and a stack of stationery Daniel once gave me for our anniversary. I wrote Coraline first, thanked her for her quiet loyalty for returning, even when it was uncomfortable. I told her she reminded me of the person I had once hoped to be steady, clear-eyed, tender in ways that didn't need to be loud. Then I wrote Nathan. It came out sharper. I told him what it felt like to be erased, to watch your child gamble away your trust like spare change. I told him I remembered the day he was born, and how I once believed nothing could shake the bond between us. I ended with a truth I knew he would not want to read, that I loved him still, but no longer recognized him. I folded both letters, sealed them, and placed them in the drawer beside the sink. They would stay there for now. Some words needed air. Others were meant to sit quietly in the dark, waiting for a moment that might never come. Upstairs, I heard Coraline's footsteps return. The new will was signed on a quiet Thursday, notarized in the study with Evelyn's steady presence and Howard's soft encouragement. The house would go to Coraline with provisions for the grandchildren. A portion of my savings was marked for the local library, and a donation would be made in Daniel's name to the small hospital where he spent his last days. It felt right, measured not by tradition, but by truth. In the weeks that followed, Howard and I turned our attention to the garden. He replaced the bent trellis and I cleared the weeds from around the rose bushes Daniel planted the year we moved in. They bloomed late, but they bloomed strong. Coraline came on weekends sometimes with the children, sometimes just to sit beside me in the shade with a book and her bare feet on the grass. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a place returned to itself. I began to move through the rooms differently, not like someone defending what was left, but like someone at peace with what remained. The silence wasn't hollow anymore. It was full, patient, waiting for whatever might come next. One morning, the mail brought an unfamiliar envelope. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable, slanted, careful, and slightly overpressed into the paper. Nathan's. I held it for a long time before opening it, the afternoon light falling across the table, like an old photograph. The letter was short. No excuses, no pleas. Just an acknowledgement of what he'd done. He wrote that he understood why I'd shut him out, that he didn't expect forgiveness. He said he had acted out of fear of aging, of losing control, of watching his own life slip, but none of it made what he did justifiable. He hoped maybe someday I would remember him as more than that mistake. I read it twice, then folded it carefully and returned it to the envelope. I placed it in the same drawer as the letters I'd written, but never sent. There was a time when I would have responded if only to be sure my voice was heard. But something had shifted in me. I didn't need to speak every truth aloud to live it. Maybe healing isn't always about the reconciliation. Maybe it's about the stillness that comes when you stop waiting for someone else to fix the broken part. I stood and poured a glass of water.